Hello everybody, Brady here from BG2X, and we are back here for another breakdown of the tropics here. Again, still breaking down Tropical Storm Erin and its future, who it could impact directly, indirectly, etc. There's still a lot of questions that won't be answered tonight, but I feel another breakdown is good to let us know what's happened in the last day for those that have since watched my last video from last night or this morning, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, so without further ado, let's get going here. Here is the latest we have on Tropical Storm Erin. It is, if you hear anything in the background, that is just my puppy. There is a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm, still currently 1004 millibar, according still to the best track. If we slide here, yes, good. Okay, and so this, you can see, still according to the best track, will stay the same for the next advisory, likely, or actually... Yep, and 1004 millibars. So again, is 2 mil. It's technically a little weaker from last night, but it's a little stronger than it was earlier today, where it was 1006 millibars. So it's strengthened a couple millibars, but not enough to suggest, according to satellite, that it has strengthened currently. Take a look here on satellite. That is what is going on it. So as we've entered nighttime here, so during the day it really was lacking the ability to get convection and cooler cloud tops consistently firing. And since nighttime's hit, we call it the diurnal maximum period, where Dmax, in other words, where it's that height period. Where we're able to get cooler cloud tops, thanks to the nighttime, is able to help those cooler cloud tops get going, versus during the day, a little bit warmer, makes it harder for convection to get going. And what we've seen here at night, overnight, here in the main development region, as Erin is slowly cooking away. Now we saw maybe a little bit of that low-level circulation become a little bit more organized, and allowing this convection to continue to fire. But we have yet to see some true vertical organization, meaning here's how I would view it here if we slide. Well, first, we'll stay here. Again, you have to. I always like breaking it down from a vertical perspective. You have to look. That's how you have to look at it. So this is the surface here, right? Imagine I'll 2D for a second. Let me go to blue. It'll be a little bit easier, I think. No, I think yellow will be a little bit. What is the opaque? Neither is all that good, to be honest. We'll switch to. Will black still be? Yeah, black will still be fine. So imagine this is the ocean here, and this is Erin. So here, but let's draw over here. Let's go 3D now. So imagine this is a 3D column of the atmosphere here. Erin here, right, it's low-level circulation, rather strong at the surface, but you have to remember mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. And the stronger the storm gets, the stronger those winds start to rotate, and the more through the upper levels of the atmosphere, but also the more the vortex becomes stacked as well. So right now, the low-level center and the mid-level center are displaced currently, and we're not even getting, it's not strong enough, nowhere near strong enough to quite get into the upper levels and feel that steering currents from there yet. And so the more this becomes, again, I say that I don't want to say the more, but until the mid-level center and the low-level center become stacked, it will be harder for this storm, right, to vent out the air. And the faster that it can vent out the air, so the more stacked the system is. I drew a tree kind of, but the stronger the system's able to get, and the more those thunderstorms rotate rapidly around the center of the system. But really what you're seeing right now instead is convective bursts that are getting going, and kind of heading south. They're not really able to rotate up shear all that much right now. We're seeing a lack or an inability for convection to really get going, rotate up shear and around the system of the core here. We're just seeing some attempted hot towers trying to fire around the center and kind of just head south. And now we're seeing these really get going south, almost approaching 15 degrees north. So I'll be curious to see how far south this thing can really get displaced through the early morning hours through the mid and late morning. How far south and southwest can this thing go? Because if we take a look here, uh, here's a look here at the surface. So what do I actually mean? This is the surface, remember we were talking about. And now here's 850 millibars, and here's 700, and here's the surface. You can see not perfectly in line, 700 millibars and 1000, just a little bit disorganized as well. Not that it's so incredibly um, displaced, but it's not a stacked, well stacked vortex, and it's still having some, rather significant problems in being able to become as organized and strong as it needs to, and that's no surprise. But as conditions become more and more favorable, warmer sea surface temperatures, a little bit less wind shear working against it, we'll be able to see that intensify. But the more that gets delayed, the more we will see the low level steering currents, continue to work. More than, let's say, feeling the steering from the upper levels, meaning the system's not as strong yet. So a weaker system will be able to move a little bit more quickly and probably be able to dip a little bit more southwest. So the further that happens, and again, this is the current cone for the National Hurricane Center. The more that happens, the more we have to keep an eye on our Leeward Islands, and also keep an eye on Puerto Rico as well. So we have to keep an eye on our folks there, and then also eventually down the line the Bahamas. Now I still think we covered what to look for down the line. The upper level environment keeps shifting left and right in days 7, 8, 9, 10 right now. So we don't need to go super in depth on there. Again, we covered that in last night's video. You can go back and watch that if you did not see that. But what I looking at here is, notice why I think it's going to continue to have problems. Is look at all of this dry air that this system has to work through still, and it's really struggling. You can see it even if we zoom in here. That dry air is really punching against. You can see as the is even moving westward. That shield is having a lot of trouble. That moisture bubble is having a lot of trouble pushing forward. And you can see it's getting pushed. If we zoom out even more, and let's go to, say, 96 frames, we'll go to 96 frames. Look how much, it's getting pushed south, the convection. You can see convection is not able to really get going at all to the north. And you can see convection is getting displaced more and more to the south. And I think we're seeing this thing in real time getting pretty well tugged to the south here. So I'll be curious to see how much farther to the south this thing gets tugged before it starts moving a little bit more west, or west-northwest again. Over the next couple days. But we can see here is I want it to play out a little bit more. So let me get back to here, and there we go. And what you can see here as we take a look is all of this dry air. This is right associated with Saharan dry air from Saharan desert, we call it, Saharan air layer, SAL we call it, and for acronym. And all of this dry air out ahead of this system, this has to work through this still. Right, and there's still wind shear working against the system here, and so we're seeing right now a little bit of a difficulty, especially to the from the northeast, and that's where we're seeing this convection getting pushed shunted to the south more. Because look how there's less dry air, especially to the southeast, in this area. So we're seeing less of we're seeing less of that ability for convection to really rotate up shear to the north, and around the low level circulation. So, and again, the more that happens, this convection gets shunted more and more to the south. Then we start have to watch concerns for some of these northern islands in Puerto Rico, at least in the shorter term through days 3, 4, 5. And so this is why I continue to advertise that we should be keeping a very close eye on some of these areas just in case, right? I've seen crazier things before, and the more this deviates in the short term, the longer term, the more it can deviate in the medium and longer term. So we have to continue to keep a close eye because this is a lot of dry air this system has to work through. And one of the most important things, I call it an S tier importance, is moisture to a hurricane system. And you can see here at the lower levels here on the water vapor imagery, there is still a lot of dry air, even way out ahead of the system, that needs to work through. So until shear relaxes, wind shear, because wind shear is able to transport that dry air. One of the factors until wind shear relaxes a little bit more and it starts working its way into a more favorable environment. And the environment starts to moisten up a little bit more, that moisture bubble becomes a little bit more expansive. That's when we'll start to see that strengthening really more so rapid intensification be able to take place. Until then, only expecting some gradual strengthening over the next, I would say, even 1 to 2 days at least still, with this system. And so that's kind of what I'm watching for right now. So the more that we see that, the more this thing will be able to get tugged more and more to the west south, more and more to the southwest. And that's what we have to continue to keep an eye on, because there's so many still factors we have to take into account with this system. So even though we still have a lot to look at with all these model runs, we have to keep a close eye and see our models being able to properly account for what's going on in the short term, because by the time we get to days 8, 9, and 10, it could look a lot different if you're just focusing on the result that models are showing you versus what's actually going to happen. And that's always where my mind goes when it comes to forecasting. So, I hope this is becoming clear, how I'm forecasting the system, how I like to forecast in general a little bit for those that, are just getting a reminder. That's my puppy, of course. But I hope you all get a very good understanding that there is still a lot of complications with what's going on right now in terms of how far out we still are. I mean, you think about any potential, regardless of location. I mean, we're talking 8, 9, almost 10 days out, depending on where you live. And it could be more waves after that. So we'll have to keep a close eye on how things progress, and we'll also have to keep an eye on, hey, yeah, we're recording here. Thank you. We'll have to keep a close eye on the upper level steering and all of the different things associated with the upper level environment that could potentially that we'll potentially have to look at down the line, because the location, depending on how long ridges fill in, which we talked about a lot last night. There's so much more that we still need to figure out in the long term. But I feel like in the short term, that is what I'm watching most, is how much could we see a center reformation depending on where some of these CB bursts, these convection bursts are located. I always say CB, but it just flows better, CB bursts, than just CB. But these convective bursts that get going still around the low level center of circulation, we'll see if any of that, it will help be able to stack the vortex maybe a little bit more. And maybe that could be further south, or maybe are able to rotate something up shear, and that will be able to get a little bit more of a northerly jog as opposed to something else. So we have to keep a very close eye on the short-term satellite and under the hood trends that are happening with the system. And so it's very important for me to be constantly looking and evaluating a lot of these things, because I think there's definitely a lot of little nuances that can tend to get missed sometimes. And so I feel like I take it as my duty to try to pinpoint what's going on. So that's going to do it for me. Again, just another tropics update here. I would expect another one tomorrow night. Wouldn't guarantee it, but I would expect another one tomorrow night. In the meantime, I hope you all have a great morning, great whenever you're watching this, and I appreciate y'all tuning in. If you don't mind hitting the like button, greatly appreciated. Peace, y'all.